May I speak in the name of God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. I think by this point, most of you know that I grew up in the Baptist tradition, and there we valued a few things. We valued scripture, we valued the worship band, and we valued the 3-point sermon. And do you know, I think I've never preached a 3-point sermon until today. So you can hear the very first one. And it's these three. Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple. Number one. Number two, whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. And number three, none of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all your possessions. Now, I know I'm not in the Baptist tradition anymore, and I read that the 3-point sermon can be adapted to the Anglican market by the addition of a joke at the start and a poem at the end. That was the joke. There won't be a poem. Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple. Well, I'll get on to the bit about hate in just a moment, but first, I want to think about that phrase that pops up in all three of those, cannot be my disciple. Now, that can mean two different things in English. Let me give you an example. Sometimes we say to children, if you don't finish your dinner, you cannot have any pudding. And that means I won't let you have any pudding. But we can also say, if you haven't got a mouth, you cannot have any pudding. And that means you're just not able to. It's a thing that's impossible. And it's that second sense that Jesus is getting at here. Not that I won't let you be my disciple, but just if you're not able to do these things, you're not able to be my disciple. It's just a thing that's not possible. That doesn't get us past, though, even on another reading of these problems with hate. We might have it like this now. Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, and even life itself, is not able to be my disciple. Well, it's the Greek word miseo that's translated hate here, and that is what it means. But as is often the translator's problem, there's no neat one-for-one way of expressing everything that means in the Greek in the English. Now, it wouldn't be weird for Tim to say, I love Alison more than I love Jonathan. That would be a normal thing to say in English. But it would be quite weird for Tim to say, I hate Jonathan more than I hate Alison. Even though that's kind of the same thing, because we know that sort of love and hate are opposites, and if you love one more than another, then you hate the other thing more than the first. And we do that with other things. So we say, we can say a radiator, one radiator is hotter than the other, and we can equally say that the other radiator is colder than the first. But we don't use love and hate in that comparative way. We use love comparatively, but rarely do we use hate comparatively. But in Greek, you can absolutely do that. So we might say, we might say, do you love roses or do you love Quality Street more? But the first century Greek speaker might say something like, do you hate roses or do you hate Quality Street more? Meaning, which do you like less? It sounds odd to us, but it's just the same comparative sense that we use the word love in. And it's that comparative sense that Jesus must be going for here. I don't say that because he's a great lover of families. He has not very much to say about family, a lot to say about the fact that it's been superseded by the new family, which is the believing community. But he must mean it in this comparative sense, because otherwise this command to hate would run so contrary to all of the words that he says about loving, not hating, about doing good, not doing evil. You don't have to hate your family or your own life in our modern sense of the word, but you're still called to a very difficult thing. That is, to hate them more than you hate Christ. Or to put it into more familiar language for us, to love Christ more than even you love your own family, to love Christ more than even you love your own life. And that's so tough for us because our families are our kind of primary marker of identification for many of us. They're where we ground our being. It's how we understand who we are in the world. What Jesus is saying in this piece of teaching is that you are not able to be a disciple if you love yourself or your family more than him. That's number one. Number two, whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. For my money, there's no better description of what it means to carry the cross than the one that John Howard Yoder gave. He says, the cross of Christ was the price of his obedience to God. It was suffering for having done right and for loving where others hated. And he goes on to say then that the cross of the Christian is no different. It's the price of our obedience to God's love for others. Such unflinching love for friend and foe alike will mean hostility and suffering for us as it did for him. And we have many examples throughout our Christian history of what that might mean. Carol preached to us last week about one of them, about the martyr Maximilian Kolb. For him, carrying the cross meant giving up even his own life. For some of us, it will mean doing what's right, despite the fact that that causes us persecutions and suffering. You know, sometimes we can manage to do the things that we know we ought to do because we realize people will say, oh, he is excellent, isn't he, for doing that? You know, we'll get praise back in return. Even though we don't really want to do it, we think, well, I'll get praise back for doing this. It's worth taking the risk. Carrying our cross is doing those things that we know that are right, the things that are good that we ought to do, even when we additionally know that the cost of that will be persecution and suffering, mockery from the world. What Jesus is saying in this teaching is if you're not able to put his teachings first, if you're not able to face the suffering that accompany Christian life, then you are not able to be his disciple. Number 3, none of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all your possessions. You know, when I was looking through the Greek for this one, I was thinking there must be something in here to soften the blow. There might be some alternative translation. Or maybe this is quite out of keeping with the rest of Jesus' teaching, so we can put this to one side. Well, possessions here means everything that you have, all that is in existence that's yours. Your material stuff, yeah, absolutely. But even more than that, everything you possess in the looser sense, your relationships, your positions of privilege and power in the world, the whole lot. And this is what Jesus teaches again and again, over and over in the gospel. In another place, he says, take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. And in another place, he counsels, sell your possessions and give alms. The fishermen that he calls to be his disciples leave their families, their livelihoods, their securities to come and follow him. So does Levi. The Galilean women, they use their financial resources to support his ministry. And the story that always cuts deepest for me as a rich young man is the rich young man who comes and Jesus says, you're doing great. You're doing everything really, really wonderfully. Just one more thing. Sell everything you have and give the money to the poor. And he goes away sad. What Jesus is teaching here is that if you're not able to put your possessions and your material things, all of this world's praise, to one side, then you're not able to be his disciple. What Jesus teaches in all three of these is that you're only able to be his disciple if it's your priority. You need to be prepared for discipleship. It's demanding. Christian life is not another thing to add to your list of hobbies and interests on your CV, like you're in a job interview and you say, oh, and additionally, I quite like bird watching and knitting and worshipping the one true and living God. It's not just another thing to tack on to the end. He asks of his disciples what he himself willingly did. He left his family, the security of his home, to become an itinerant preacher and a healer. He took up the cross, the instrument of torture and death. And at the time of his death, all that he possessed, the clothes, were those that were gambled away by the soldiers. Now you might still be thinking, but that language is outrageous. Being called to hate our families, being called to give up all of our possessions. And it's meant to be. It's meant to be outrageous. This is a call to radical discipleship. It means that those who are following Jesus are not going to be making decisions based on what's best for me, or even on what's best for my family. It may mean moving to a less comfortable place than Epping. It may mean leaving everything behind because God has called. It may mean living more simply because our resources might be better used for other people. It may mean making unpopular choices. This is what Jesus is talking about. And it's a stark contrast to that Hollywood depiction of the Christian family, the happy Christian home, where Christian faith has somehow been twisted into making sure that I'm just fine and that my family are okay. That's why this stark language is used. That's why we're told to hate. That's why we're told to carry an instrument of death and torture. That's why we're told to give up everything we possess. We need to hear it in the strongest language possible, because otherwise we just domesticate it. We make the gospel easy to hear and easy to live. So hear Christ's words and let them shake you in his calling to discipleship. Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. None of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all your possessions. Amen.